Initiating moisture.
If you're looking at me and thinking to yourself, damn, looks like Charlie hasn't slept in over 24 hours, you'd be absolutely right. And since I couldn't sleep, I decided why not watch the entire Cyberpunk anime that just dropped, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. So Cyberpunk Edgerunners is a new anime set in the Cyberpunk universe, and I don't need an implant to read your mind. You're probably wondering if it's as disappointing as the game was, and the answer is an absolute fuck no. The anime slaps so hard. Let's just rip this band-aid off now. We all know that Cyberpunk released in a pretty shitty state. There were more bugs in that game than there is in a frat house trash can. And it suffered. It was a very disappointing launch, probably one of the most disappointing launches in recent memory. I understand they've been addressing it and making it better over time, and I think that's great. I haven't gone back to it. I just can't bring myself to it. It's painful. Like getting a brain dance from a goddamn garbage truck. I really can't see myself going back to the game, but I'm happy they didn't just abandon it in an unacceptable state. But anyway, this anime is set in that universe, and as I understand it, is actually canon to that universe. And I think that's great, because Cyberpunk, even with all its flaws, had an amazing setting. And I'm super glad we get to explore more of it here with Edgerunner. It is so good. Now, it's not perfect, nothing ever is, unless of course it's a Brendan Fraser movie, but this show goes so hard, just non-stop, full throttle, nuts to butts. It's done by Studio Trigger, and I think it is probably their best work so far. It is breathtaking, just a gorgeous, beautiful show. A lot of passion went into this, and it really paid off. They went fucking turbo mode on this one. They dialed this shit up to the next level. I was blown away by it. I think everything fit super well. I even got similar vibes in this show as I did to Redline, which I think is one of the best animated movies ever made. There's just moments in this show where I was like, damn, I feel like I'm watching Redline again for the first time, which is just an amazing feeling. One of the best feelings a human being can experience, true euphoria. When you watch Redline, it becomes like the proudest moment of your life, up there with like graduating college or getting married. It's just such a good movie. Highly recommend checking it out, but I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, there were times in this show where I was like, wow, they're up there with some of the best when it comes to animation, especially when it comes to the action. They didn't pull any punches. It's hyper violent, super gory, over the top. Everyone like blows up. There's ribs flying, there's intestines going all over the place, intestines flying around as poop's falling out the back end, like it goes hard. It doesn't hold anything back, and I love that shit. That hyper-violent action is always just a guilty pleasure of mine. It leads to really goofy, over-the-top moments that I think are just always fun, and they do it wonderfully here. And since it's set in the Cyberpunk universe, the action's pretty creative since everyone's got all kinds of implants and all kinds of crazy cybernetic augments that let them do wild shit. So it's always flashy, and it's always great. The action shines, and really everything shines here because they clearly put a lot of work into every little excruciating detail of this universe. I can't praise the visuals enough here. But now let me briefly pop this show's dick out of my mouth. This is where I have a few complaints. It's story and writing. I don't think the story's bad by any means. In fact, I actually really like the story and the direction. But I feel like there was a lot they wanted to tell and only a short time to tell it. It's a 10-episode series, which is pretty normal length, but I really feel like they wanted something bigger, so they condensed all of these massive story beats into really small chunks. So, for example, in episode 1, we learn a lot of information about the main character and his relationship to his mom. But we learn all of that information through like maybe 2 minutes of just exposition dump, like constantly. So it leads to a lot of things just kind of falling flat because they got there so quickly without really building up to these things. I'm not going to give spoilers, so I'm not going to go too deep into examples, but I wanted to just highlight the character's relationship to his mother right away because so much happens in such a short amount of time in just episode 1 that it's hard to really care. You just kind of brush it off like, oh, well, I really didn't care at all because they didn't make me care. And there's just times where the writing's kind of silly, where they're having a conversation and it's just so stiff, like, Mom, I don't really want to go to school. She's like, I want you to go to school for a better life. It's why I'm working so hard for you, David. It's why I'm working these jobs to put money on the table to send you to that very prestigious academy. And it's why I'm never home, David. It's why you never see me at home, because you and I, we're not bonding enough because I'm busy working for you. It's just like kind of that old cliche. It's just, I don't know, they hit you so quickly over the head with a lot of exposition that you just kind of roll your eyes at some of the writing. But overall, I still think it's good. Like, the characters, I think, are well written as they develop throughout the 10 episodes, but they just try and do so much, and they do it a little too fast, in my opinion. It's not a huge problem or anything. It's not a deal breaker. It doesn't ruin the show or anything, and it doesn't even really hold it back. It's not that detrimental or anything, but it's something that just kind of stood out as a bit weaker than the rest of the components. You know, the visuals are on another level. They're popping off hard as fuck, and the soundtrack is always boner jams. The soundtrack is really good, and that's something you'll notice right away in episode 1. Like, as they're just doing things, like even just driving in the car, like with this conversation I was talking about, there's like a backing track to it, which is just like an actually great song that's lightly playing in the background, and it just adds a lot to the ambiance of the whole world. I really appreciated that. I think they did a great job with their music choice here. So yeah, overall the show's amazing. Plugging into the moist meter, I'm giving Cyberpunk Edgerunners a 90%. Really, the biggest flaw with the show is it had too much for too little time. I want more from it. Like, I'm super invested in the universe now thanks to the show, and I would have liked to see it develop more across a longer runtime, like maybe 2 seasons to reach the conclusion that it reaches in the show here, instead of just have it be such a speed run almost. But regardless, the show is absolutely fucking fantastic. I think they did a great job with it, and yeah, that's really about it. See ya.